Which reminds me, what's become of my ring, Frodo, that you took away? I've lost it, Bilbo dear, said Frodo. I got rid of it, you know. What a pity, said Bilbo. I should have liked to have seen it again.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. Today we are reading Book 6, Chapter 6 of The Lord of the Rings, Many Partings. My name is Zach.
My name's Logan. I love this chapter. I love it. I think it's one of the great chapters in the book, actually.
Interesting.
I don't know why. I just read it and I just was like, I just love it. I don't know. Everybody loves each other so much and they're never going to see each other again, all of them in the same place. And Treebeard is in this chapter, which I completely forgot.
Yeah. Saruman too.
And Saruman is in it, and Saruman is just terrible. You just hate him.
Yeah.
And then Bilbo, and I mean, Bilbo is my favorite. He's my favorite guy. I don't know. I just love him. You know, there's no plot really. Not really, except for the Sauron part. I guess there's a little bit of track laid there, but
yeah, it's just another series of long goodbyes. The story is winding down. Tolkien's tying up loose ends, and he's getting everybody in place for the end. There's big jumps in time in this chapter, which has been pretty uncharacteristic of Tolkien up to this point. We move from the marriage and coronation of Aragorn in the month of May, and we end this chapter going towards like October.
Yeah.
And Bilbo and Frodo's birthday. So there's a pretty significant jump in time that happens over these, 14 pages?
Yeah.
Is this the only dialogue that we get from Arwen in the entire book?
I think so. I don't think she says anything at Rivendell.
And she essentially tells Frodo that she's going to give him her seat on the ship to Valinor.
Yeah.
And the idea that Frodo has wounds that can't be healed on Middle-earth comes up in this chapter, and that definitely has payoff in the final 3 chapters of this book. I think it's probably the most confusing thing about Lord of the Rings, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot when we get to the Grey Havens chapter, but, why does Frodo leave? But I'm not sure that I ever realized that Arwen gives him this as a gift.
I didn't either. I didn't realize that you would sort of need like somebody else's place. Bilbo goes too, right? And so I wonder how he ends up getting a spot.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Is it because he gave up the ring and it makes him like a extra glowed up guy?
I think that's definitely part of it. But I mean, I've always known that it was a grace of the Valar, but I hadn't quite put 2 and 2 together that Arwen, in choosing to become immortal, to become a mortal, she has the ability to give this gift to Frodo. Did you also notice that when we see Saruman at the end, he mocks Galadriel by asking her, what ship will bear you?
Yeah, that part is confusing.
Galadriel, she's part of this ancient race of elves who were alive in the deeps of time back before the sun and the moon. So she was present at the time of the crafting of the Silmarils and at the time of the 2 trees that we talked a little bit about last time. And her hair reflects the light of the trees, so much so that Fëanor, the great elf who crafted the Silmarils, asked her for a strand of her hair because he thought it was so beautiful.
She's not the only one who asked her for some hair.
That's right. And she said no to Fëanor, but she says yes to Gimli in Lord of the Rings. And she doesn't just give him one strand, she gives him 3, which, mirrors the 3 Silmarils, certainly. But Feanor, who crafted the Silmarils, after the trees are destroyed by Morgoth and Ungoliant, the Valar come to him and they say, will you give us the Silmarils and we can break them and then restore the light of the trees? And he tells them no, because he covets the beautiful things that he made. Without knowing, at the very same moment that he tells them no, Morgoth kills Feanor's father and steals the Silmarils, and then retreats to Middle-earth. Feanor musters the elves to get the Silmarils back against the command of the Valar, but he doesn't have ships. And so he asks to use the ships of another group of elves who are seafaring, and they tell him no. And he goes to war with them and forcibly takes the ships. This is called the kinslaying. And Galadriel was part of that group that left on the ships to come to Middle-earth. I'm pretty sure that she never participated in the kinslaying directly, but she chose to defy the Valar to come to Middle-earth because she had aspirations to rule. And because of that, she is banned from returning to Valinor. And the story changed over time, but I think that the best reading based on what we have of her in Lord of the Rings is that the moment that she denies the offer of the ring from Frodo, she earns pardon from the Valar.
Sure.
And that's what allows her to return. But Saruman doesn't know that she was offered the ring by Frodo.
Sure. Right.
And so he mocks her and he says, what ship would bear you? And we know, because we know how the story ends, that she does go on the last ship back to Valinor, that she does receive grace from the Valar and pardon. She's such an interesting character, and it's clear how much Tolkien loved Galadriel.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting bit of the lore that makes its way into this chapter.
Yeah, it is interesting. And it is, I think if you don't know any of it, or you only kind of know it very passingly, like I do, like once you started talking about it, I was like, oh yeah. But as I was reading this chapter, I was just like, what's he talking about? Why is he being mean to Galadriel? I mean, other than the fact that he's a scumball. But yeah, that's helpful. It's good background. I think it's surprising how much I enjoyed reading the chapter. Like, it surprised me how much I enjoyed it, because I can't say that I've been super looking forward to recording these chapters. I'm looking forward to the Scouring the Shire and the Grey Havens. But the other ones, I'm kind of like, we gotta get through these to get to those, And so, I don't know. I found myself really moved by all the goodbyes and Bilbo's poetry, and I don't know. Tolkien does justice by every character. Like, Aragorn rides into the sun in his white armor and it is like burning with fire, and then he holds aloft the Elfstone and it is a green flash. I'm like, hey, it's great. That's great. And then Galadriel does, basically the same thing. She waves her
ring.
hand and whatever, holds up her ring, and it, Frodo knows that it was the flash of this ring. One of the things that Frodo knows now that he's been on this, almost a year-long journey, is that there's a elf queen in the world who has a magic ring that holds the light of Arendelle.
Yeah.
And we know that too, right? And so I just think the justice he does to each character, Legolas and Gimli, and the wonder that Legolas experiences seeing the the caves, caverns of Helm's Deep, and the change in each character, and like everything else in Lord of the Rings, it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I love that he spends time with each character, like Treebeard. He doesn't just leave that dangling. We find out what happens to Sauron. We see Wormtongue. The quarrel between Gimli and Éomer is settled. There's really no loose ends in this whole story.
Yeah, it's just sweet little bows tied on everything. It's great.
Well, do you want to go through all the bows?
Let's jump in. Let's untie all the bows here.
The chapter begins with, when the days of rejoicing were over, at last the companions thought of returning to their own homes. Frodo comes to Aragorn, and he and Arwen are sitting in the gardens, and the tree that they just took from the mountain is blossoming, and Arwen is singing songs of Valinor. And Aragorn says to Frodo, I know what you've come to say, Frodo. You wish to return to your own home. Well, dearest friend, the tree grows best in the land of its sires. But for you and all the lands of the West, there will ever be a welcome. And though your people have had little fame in the legends of the great, they will now have more renown than many wide realms that are no more. And that's true, man. They do have renown. Like, we're sitting here talking about them.
Yeah, I know. I love that. I think everybody knows what a hobbit is.
Now?
If you just ask, somebody on the street, what's a hobbit, they'd be able to tell you.
I think so.
Like a little guy, Like,
yeah, just something that Tolkien made up one day.
Right, yeah. Frodo's wish is to go back to the Shire. First, he has to go to Rivendell because that's where Bilbo's waiting. And he misses Bilbo and says that he was grieved when he wasn't there with Elrond. Maybe he expected Bilbo to be at the wedding. And Arwen says, are you surprised they didn't come? Like, you have to understand how old Bilbo is, and the same power that was in the ring that has extended his life is destroyed. I like that she says, he's ancient in years now according to his own kind, and he awaits you, for he will not again make any long journey save one.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's like, if you don't know about the Grey Havens, is she talking about the journey of death?
That's what I think you'd assume if you didn't know. Yeah.
So Frodo says, then I beg leave to depart soon. And Aragorn says that they'll leave in 7 days. And this is where Arwen talks about her gift. She says, a gift I will give you, for I am the daughter of Elrond. I shall not go with him now when he departs to the havens, for mine is the choice of Luthien. And as she, so have I chosen, both the sweet and the bitter. But in my stead you shall go, ring-bearer, when the time comes, and if you then desire it. If your hurts grieve you still, and the memory of your burden is heavy, then you may pass into the west, until all your wounds and weariness are healed. But wear this now in memory of Elfstone and Evenstar, with whom your life has been woven. And she gives him a white gem hung on a silver chain. And she says, when the memory of the fear and the darkness troubles you, this will bring you aid. And so 3 days later, Éomer, King Éomer of Rohan, comes to receive the body of his uncle, Theoden. And they have a great feast in the Great Hall of Feasts, all capital.
It's a great place to have a feast. One of the great places to have a feast is the Great Hall of Feasts.
Éomer sees these elf women, and he says, Gimli Glowin's son, have you your axe ready?
Nay, Lord, but I can speedily fetch it if there be need. Oh, he's so good.
You shall judge, said Éomer, for there are certain rash words concerning the Lady of the Golden Wood that lie still between us, and now I have seen her with my eyes. So this goes all the way back to their very first conversation together.
Yeah, like the beginning of Two Towers, right? Basically, close to the beginning.
Éomer basically calls Galadriel a witch, and Gimli's like,
take it back.
I will kill you where you stand. That's my elf
right.
girlfriend.
Yeah.
Gimli says, well, Lord, what say you now? And Éomer says, alas, I will not say that she is the fairest lady that lives. And Gimli says, then I must go for my axe. Éomer asks him not to murder him where he stands. He says, "But first I shall plead this excuse. Had I seen her in other company, I would have said all that you could wish. But now I put Queen Arwen Evenstar first, and I am ready to do battle on my own part with any who deny me. Shall I call for my sword?" And Gimli bows low and says, "Nay, you are excused for my part, Lord. You have chosen the evening, but my love is given to the morning, and my heart forebodes that soon it will pass away forever." And that, of course, is true. And so on the seventh day, as Aragorn said, the day of departure comes. They retrieve the body of King Theoden from the tombs in Rathdennen and they place him upon a golden bier. And they have this procession through the city with his body. And all the companions are given steeds. Frodo and Sam are given ponies and they ride at Aragorn's side. Pippin rides with the Knights of Gondor and Merry as Theoden's esquire with the riders of Rohan. We even get like a bow tied on Gonbury Gone.
Yeah, I've forgotten that too. That they get close to the gray wood of Amundin and they hear drums in the hills. Then Aragorn has trumpets blown and his heralds basically announce that the king is here and the forest he gives to Gonbury Gone and his folk to be their own forever, and hereafter let no man enter it without their leave. And then the drums roll loudly and they're silent. And
Yeah.
that's our goodbye to, I mean, he literally ties a bow on everything. I wasn't thinking about these guys, you know?
I wasn't like, oh, hey, I really wonder what happened to Gonbury Gone.
No. But that's what I like about this chapter. Tolkien's like, remember these guys? Remember these guys? You know? And you're like, oh yeah, I do remember them. And he's like, well, they get to have this forest. Like, remember, like we said a few chapters ago? And you're like, oh, yeah, I do remember that. He's like, yeah, I'm really good at this, aren't I? And you're like, yeah, dude. I love it. He's like talking to us, you know?
I mean, I know we've said this a few times, but Tolkien would have been forgiven with the ring falling in the cracks of doom, and then they all lived happily ever after.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But he gives us like an extra 200 something pages.
Yeah.
To just not give anybody reason to say that he left a plot hole. He thought through every question. That's why it's so funny reading the letters of Tolkien, because people will write him asking questions and you can almost hear the annoyance in his voice where he's just like, I already answered this.
Yeah, it's in the book.
I anticipated your question 20 years ago when I wrote it.
They get back to Rohan and it's time for a funeral. It
takes them 15 days to get there. So, they're moving at a much slower pace than, the muster of Rohan.
Yeah, they're not taking those back ways either.
And they place the body of Theoden to rest. And Merry's response here, they place him in the barrows with his forefathers. Merry is moved to tears. He weeps and he says, Theoden King, farewell. As a father you were to me for a little while, farewell. And they have this funeral feast in the Golden Hall where they drink to Theoden and they list all of his sires. And when they speak Theoden's name at last, they drain their cups and then everyone rises and hails the new king. Hail Éomer, King of the Mark. And Éomer takes this opportunity to do something that it seems like is out of the ordinary because he almost apologizes for it. He's like, this isn't how we normally do things, but I know that Theoden would be happy to do this because of how much he loved his niece. And he declares that Faramir, steward of Gondor and prince of Ithilien, asks that Éowyn, lady of Rohan, should be his wife, and she grants it full willing. Therefore, they shall be troth plighted before you all. At their marriage, Éomer says, thus is the friendship of the Mark and Gondor bound with a new bond, and the more do I rejoice. Aragorn's response to this, I think, is really beautiful. He says to Éomer that the Rohirrim give Gondor the fairest thing in their realm. Éowyn looks into his eyes and says, wish me joy, my liege lord and healer. And Aragorn says, I have wished thee joy ever since I first saw thee. It heals my heart to see thee now in bliss.
That's nice.
The language is so high. I mean, we've joked about, Lord of the Rings and the changing of the tone several times, but I feel like Tolkien is really cooking when he starts using these and thous.
Yeah. Especially in these later chapters, after the ring is destroyed, it seems like he's in that mode a lot because there's a lot of courtly stuff happening.
Yeah. After the marriage of Eowyn and Faramir, the rest of the company prepares to leave. Arwen leaves to return back to Minas Tirith, which means that this is the last time that she'll see her father. It says, none saw her last meeting with Elrond, her father, for they went up into the hills and there spoke long together, and bitter was their parting that should endure beyond the ends of the world. Elrond is going to live forever, and Arwen will die. And so this isn't just saying goodbye. I mean, this is a final goodbye.
Yeah. Heavy. I understand it's almost like out of politeness that Tolkien doesn't give us this scene. There's a way in which elves are mysterious, and Tolkien always kind of only looks at elves sideways,
Yeah.
You never get like a full picture of what's going on with them. And I think Arwen is maybe the like most clouded, untouchable person. And so, yeah, but I do kind of regret that we don't get to hear, what does Elrond say? What does Elrond say?
Yeah. What do you say?
And I kind of wish Tolkien had taken a crack at it, maybe he did and, ended up in the bin. But
as you were talking just now, it just occurred to me that this type of parting would have been common up until very recently, because if you were to ever go and live somewhere significantly far away from your home,
gosh, that's true.
If you decided to immigrate to another country, or, even if you were, moving like just a couple 100 miles away.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have a way to communicate quickly with your family members. Like, you wouldn't have a way to coordinate a visit.
Certainly wouldn't hear their voice.
Here, they're literally going to be separated by, like a mystical ocean.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, Valinor used to be separated from Middle Earth just by the ocean, but now it's like on another plane.
If I have a ship, they can just go straight off the globe, right?
Yeah, like into space. Yeah, basically.
Right.
And so, it's like Elrond's going to live on the moon, and there's no way they'd be able to. But this used to be a much more common human experience, I think.
It's a really good point.
So Éomer says goodbye to Merry. He says to him that basically he offered him riches, but Merry said no, he didn't want it. And that all that he wanted was the raiment that he'd been given.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "This I suffer, for indeed I have no gift that is worthy, but my sister begs you to receive this small thing as a memorial of Durnhelm and of the horns of the mark at the coming of the morning." And Éowyn gives Merry this ancient horn. Do you want to read the description of the horn? I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Small but cunningly wrought, all of fair silver, with a baldric of green, and writes had engraven upon it swift horsemen riding in a line that wound about it from tip to the mouth. And there were set runes of great virtue. Sounds cool.
Yeah.
Super Rohan-esque,
Yeah. And it's from a dragon's hoard.
Yeah, and it says that it's from the hoard of Scatha the Worm. It came from the north. And it was made by the dwarves. It says Errol the Young brought it from the north, so it's like super old. And she says, "He that blows it at need shall set fear in the hearts of his enemies and joy in the hearts of his friends, and they shall hear him and come to him." So that reminds me of Boromir's horn, the horn of Gondor.
Yeah.
And this is like the horn of Rohan, and now it's the horn of the Shire of Merry,
Yeah, and it's going to play an important role here in a short while. So they depart, and then they go to Helm's Deep, where they rest for 2 days. And it says that Legolas repaid his promise to Gimli and went with him to the glittering caves. And when they returned, he was silent and would say only that Gimli alone could find fit words to speak of them. And I love Legolas's snark here.
And never before has a dwarf claimed a victory over an elf in contest of words, said he. Now, therefore, let us go to Fangorn and set the score right. But Legolas is like shaken up, you know, by what he's seen down there. And I think he can appreciate it because he loves Gimli, you know, because they're friends. And he can kind of see through Gimli's eyes now in a way that he may have not been able to do before.
Their friendship is just so special.
It's great.
So then they ride to Isengard, and the Ents have kind of juiced the place up.
Yeah, it's like there's like a whole forest growing now, and it, you know, it kind of reminds you of the power of the Ents, both for their kind of like strength, you know, and their ability to bust down rock walls and all that kind of stuff, but then also this mystical ability to just to make things grow, you know, hobbits included.
Yeah.
Is pretty fun to read about.
And so they come to the Tower of Orthanc, which is now like in the middle of a mirrored pool.
Yeah.
So it's just surrounded by water. And they meet up with our buddy Treebeard, who says, "Welcome to the Treegarth of Orthanc." I underlined Treegarth. Do you have any idea what Treegarth means?
I think a garth is like an enclosure,
like an enclosed garden.
Yeah, sort of like that, right?
Yeah, so it's definitely like a Tolkien
word
invention. I think it's so interesting to call it a Treegarth. Like, you know, Orthanc has been this like place of industry and, you know, tearing down trees, and now they've reclaimed it.
It's like an orchard.
Yeah, it's like an orchard now. Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's really fascinating that Treebeard seems to know everything about what happened already. Like, I don't know if a bird told him or what, but he seems to have full knowledge of everything that happened.
Yes.
And I love the interaction between Treebeard and Gandalf here. He looks at Gandalf. Actually, it says he looked long at Gandalf. So I kind of imagine everyone just standing there because he's an Ent.
Yeah.
And like he's quiet and he's looking at Gandalf, and everybody's like, what's he going to say? And then he says, "Well, come now," he said. "You have proved mightiest." Meaning, I think, mightier than Sauron.
Yeah.
"And all your labors have gone well. Where now would you be going? And why do you come here?" And his like affection for Gandalf is just beautiful, I think.
Yeah, his admiration even.
Compared to his total ire toward Sauron.
Did you catch that Treebeard lets them know that they have like prevented a bunch of orcs from passing down into Rohan?
Yeah, he says there were a great inrush of those Bur-al-Rum, those evil-eyed, black-handed, bow-legged, flint-hearted, claw-fingered, foul-bellied, bloodthirsty, and then something too horrible to say in the common speech. Speech that a bunch of them tried to come and get into Orthanc.
It says, "Is well for you, for if they had not met us, then the king of the grassland would not have ridden far, and if he had, there would have been no home to return to." So he's basically saying, like, if the orcs had been allowed to continue down, that it would have prevented the muster of Rohan from happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Aragorn sort of recognizes the contribution of the Ents. He goes, "We know it well, and never shall it be forgotten in Minas Tirith or in Edoras." And Treebeard says, "Never is too long a word, even for me. Not while your kingdoms last, you mean, but they will have to last long indeed to seem long to Ents." And Gandalf says, "The new age begins. And in this age, it may well prove that the kingdoms of men shall outlast you, Fangorn, my friend." And of course, we know that's true as well. And this is where we get to one of the strangest things in the entire book for me. I've never understood this. I think it is explained, like, especially reading it really closely this time. This has been a question I've always had. Why does Treebeard let Sauron go?
I think this is the place where Treebeard is the most like Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
And I think there's a way in which they're kind of the same character.
Yeah, they're so similar.
And I think that, I mean, the kind of easy answer is Treebeard doesn't like to cage living things, right? It's just against his nature. Even somebody like Sauron. And he explains, I figured, a snake without its fangs can slither free. Of course, he's not really right that Sauron is without fangs, and Gandalf knows that.
Yeah.
But I think Treebeard can't see it because he's just this kind of, even though he's not hasty, he's like extremely foolish in the way that Gandalf loves. He can't really understand how just awful and deceptive Saruman is.
Yeah.
And then Gandalf says, he still has that voice, and he knew there was a soft spot in your heart, and it's not your fault, but he convinced you to let him leave.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, Treebeard, like the last thing that we hear Treebeard say before this chapter is essentially, the Ents are on it. You can trust us, and we won't let him go until the world ends, basically.
Right. I promise.
And so it's just so strange that he lets him go. And Aragorn just says, what harm will come from this will have to be a question that is answered later. He says, I will give to the Ents all this valley to do with as they will, so long as they keep a watch upon Orthanc and see that none enter it without my leave. And Treebeard says that Orthanc is locked, but that he made Sauron lock it and give him the keys, and Quickbeam has them. And so Aragorn receives these 2 black keys of intricate shape, joined by a ring of steel, and says, now I thank you once more, and I bid you farewell. May your forest grow again in peace. And this is where the company really says goodbye. Legolas and Gimli go off to explore Fangorn to make sure that Gimli holds up his side of the bargain.
Gimli's still kind of scared, I think, to go into Fangorn.
Yeah, I would be too, shoot.
Says that he agrees with no great delight.
Yes.
And that's where Aragorn says, here then at last comes the ending of the Fellowship of the Ring, which made me cry when I read it earlier.
But he says to Gimli, yet I hope ere long you will return to my land with the help that you promised. And Gimli says, we will come if our lords allow it. Gimli's farewell to the hobbits.
Gimli's the biggest worrier in the party.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
He's like a dad.
He's so worried about Pippin and Merry. I think you can just imagine him worrying all the time about the hobbits because there's these little guys and they just don't have the experience. And that comes out right here where he says, you should come safe to your own homes now, and I shall not be kept awake for fear of your peril. And so, he's confident that they'll get where they're going, finally.
And he says, we will send word when we may, and some of us may yet meet at times, but I fear that we will not all be gathered together ever again. Treebeard says farewell to Galadriel and Celeborn, and the words that he shares with her are, famous in Tolkien. They make their way into the prologue of the Lord of the Rings films. He says, it is sad that we should meet only thus at the ending, for the world is changing. I feel it in the water, I feel it in the earth, and I smell it in the air. I do not think we shall meet again. And Galadriel says, not in Middle-earth, nor until the lands that lie under the wave are lifted up again. Then in the willow meads of the Tessaranen, we may meet again in the spring. Farewell. So she's basically saying, like, once the world is mended at the end of time.
Yeah, maybe we'll meet then.
That's just beautiful.
Merry and Pippin say their final goodbye to Treebeard, and Treebeard offers them another drink of the ant draft before they go. And they are enthusiastic to take another drink.
It's like, heck yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Like, say less, King. Like, let's go do this.
It says they laugh and drain their bowls.
Oh, so good. He basically tells them to slow down. He's like, hey, take care. You've already grown since I saw you last, and they don't even respond. All they do is just drink all of it.
Yeah, it's great.
And of course, he tells them if they hear any news of the Entwives in their land to send word back to him. He waves his great hands, and the company goes off into the trees.
I think it's so funny that they get to the place where he had peeked into the stone, which was such a terrible ordeal for him. And he's like, "Gosh, I wish we had 2 stones so we could like see all of our friends."
He's
like
never learned his lesson.
No, he's just him. He's so much himself. It's great.
Aragorn responds, "Only one now remains that you could use, for you would not wish to see what the stone of Minas Tirith would show you." So, I mean, the stone from Minas Tirith is, if anybody looks at it, they see like Denethor's like burning hands on the side of it. She's like, that would terrify you. You don't want to see that. I mean, because he was present for that one too.
Yeah, he was.
But he says that he will keep the Palantir from the Tower of Orthanc, and that he'll use it to, look out upon his realm. And he reminds Pippin that he is a knight of Gondor and that he's not been released from his service. And he tells him that he'll come to the Shire one day.
Yeah, someday I'll come north.
So Aragorn says goodbye to Celeborn and Galadriel, who are leaving this place to go now to their home, to Lothlorien. And Galadriel says to Aragorn, "Elfstone, through the darkness you have come to your hope, and have now all your desire. Use well the days." And so they depart, and Aragorn leaves at sunset. They look back and they see the King of the West sitting upon his horse with his knights about him, and the falling sun shone upon them and made all their harness to gleam like red gold, and the white mantle of Aragorn was turned to a flame. Then Aragorn took the green stone and held it up, and there came a green fire from his hand.
Super cool.
So, of course, the green stone that Aragorn holds up is called the Elfstone, and it was a gift that was given to him by Galadriel, and it's this ancient stone with a storied history. But it's just hinted at, I mean, like there's so much depth to this that, you can go and do some more research about the Elfstone online if you want to, but it's just sprinkled in here. This is just a perfect example of how Tolkien will just give you a hint of something and you can tell that there is a storied history to it.
It's true. We haven't talked about verisimilitude for a while, but I definitely think that this is part of that. Is you're like, what is that Elfstone again? Like, it must be something.
It's like, oh yeah, he has a green stone. Like, who gave it? It doesn't even say like, and then he lifts the green stone that Galadriel gave him when they departed from Lothlorien. But that's what this is. And the more you dig into Tolkien, the more you learn that this stone has this history. It goes all the way back to Arendelle, and it's just a fascinating talisman that's
true,
ancient.
It's great stuff.
So the company is dwindling, and Tolkien recognizes that. He says, "Soon the dwindling company, following the Eisen, turned west and rode through the gap into the wastelands beyond. And then they turned northwards and passed over the borders of Dunland.
And they come upon an old man leaning on a staff, clothed in rags of gray or dirty white. And at his heels went another beggar, slouching and whining. 'Well, Saruman,' said Gandalf, 'where are you going?'
And Saruman's, you mentioned it in the intro, but he's just so nasty.
He's so sniveling. He and Wormtongue remind me more of Gollum than Gollum in this page.
Oh, that's a great comparison. 'What is it to you?' he answered. 'Will you still order my goings? And are you not content with my ruin?' So he's wounded and he's bitter, as if he hadn't just tried to end the whole world.
Yeah, exactly. For what?
Yeah, and it really does remind me of Smeagol. It's like that, oh, poor Smeagol will starve. It's okay. It's okay. Poor Smeagol will starve. What word did you just use? Sniveling? Yeah, it's this, it's got this not condescension, passive aggression.
Yes, that's it. It's that passive aggressive thing. absolutely.
And we all know people like this,
Oh yeah,
who have caused so much pain in other people's lives, and still all they can do is just count the injuries that have been done to them.
yeah,
It's just
yep.
so pathetic.
It is pathetic. It's pathetic and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's really vile, I
Because
think.
empathetic people, like Mary, who offers
Like
Sauron his
tobacco.
pipe weed.
Mary's such a little prince. I mean, he's got this grace to him. Yeah, I mean, Saruman's not only takes his pipe tobacco but steals his pouch.
Yeah. I mean, and Mary, he's trying to be compassionate. I think he's trying to follow Gandalf's example.
Yes, that's right.
He doesn't, lay scorn on him. He doesn't kill him. I mean, by all rights, they could just murder him where he stands for, all the death and destruction that he's caused. But Mary, in trying to show him compassion, like, what's he met back with? He's met back with scorn and, a recounting of all the injuries. He's like, yeah, you stole this from me, you thief. And so, like, one bad turn deserves another, and I'm just going to steal your pouch too.
Yeah. Awful.
And Mary, and Pippin are just kind of like, he acts like he didn't abduct us with orcs and take us in this nightmarish like journey across across the gap of Rohan to Orthanc. And it's so true though. I mean, there are people like this. We all know people like this. But Gandalf does offer help. He says, you are, scorning the help that we offer, but we still offer it to you. And Sauron responds to me, nay, pray do not smile at me. I prefer your frowns. And as for the lady here, I do not trust her. She always hated me and schemed for your part. I do not doubt that she has brought you this way to have the pleasure of gloating over my poverty. Had I been warned of your pursuit, I would have denied you the pleasure.
Galadriel basically just says, like, we weren't even thinking about you, actually. We have other things that are more urgent than hunting for you. She actually straight up says to him, you have a last chance.
Yeah.
So there's some chance for him to repent here and reconcile with Gandalf and Galadriel. But of course I think he's too far gone to ever really actually make that choice.
He says, if it be truly the last, I am glad, for I shall be spared the trouble of refusing it again. All my hopes are ruined, but I would not share yours if you have any. And so that's that reminder to Galadriel that she doesn't have a ship to escape to Valinor, that she's going to fade.
Is that what you have doomed yourself?
Yeah.
Means that he believes that they needed the power of Sauron to, like,
yeah,
whatever, go attack the gods. And
no, I think it's more that the elves know, and this comes all the way back to the Council of Elrond, where Elrond knows that if the One is destroyed.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Okay, go ahead.
Elrond knows that if the One is destroyed, the three will lose their power. And the 3 elven rings are what has been allowing the elves to be sustained in Middle-earth despite their fading.
Yes, right.
And now that the One Ring is destroyed, the elves can no longer remain in Middle-earth without fading.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so that makes the quest to destroy the ring all the more valiant, because they're doing it despite their own self-interest of preservation.
Yeah, it really is a sacrifice.
And so Sauron thinks of himself as sort of the greatest lore master of ring lore. So much so that, he calls himself Ringmaker when Gandalf recounts his encounter with him at Orthanc during the Council of Elrond. He says, I did not spend long study on these matters for naught. You have doomed yourselves and you know it. And it will afford me some comfort as I wander to think that you pulled down your own house when you destroyed mine. And now what ship will bear you back across a wide sea? It will be a gray ship full of ghosts. And he cackles hideously as he says it. So he's saying to Galadriel, like, in destroying my house by, destroying my ambitions to have the ring, the one ring, you've brought down your own house. And there's no ship that will bear you back across the sea. And so she's going to die.
That's really helpful. It's helpful to be reminded that the 3 rings and the 1 ring are kind of, their powers are kind of tied together in some way. And there's a lot. I mean, this is a short little paragraph, but there's a lot going on there. As there is in so much of Tolkien.
Just imagine reading this in 1954
and be like, what are they talking about?
It's like, I don't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Saruman's treatment of Wormtongue is so deplorable, and Wormtongue is just so wretched.
And it's terrible because Wormtongue just takes it, and he has a chance here to like ask for some help from these people who are good people, who would help him escape from Saruman, but he can't. He's too
wretched.
He's given himself over to this person, ceded his will and his agency over to this awful person.
We already talked about Merry's exchange where he offers him pipeweed, so we don't need to dwell on that much longer, but there is this foreboding statement that Saruman says, "It will serve you right when you come home if you find things less good in the South Farthing than you would like. Long may your land be short of leaf." Sam especially doesn't like the sound of this.
Yeah.
He says, "I didn't like the sound of what he said about the South Farthing. It's time we get back." But Frodo says they have to stop in Rivendell to see Bilbo first. This part always captured my imagination. As they pass through Eregion and kind of make their way into Rivendell area, it says, often long after the hobbits were wrapped in sleep, the elves and Gandalf would sit together under the stars, recalling the ages that were gone and all their joys and labors in the world, or holding counsel concerning the days to come. If any wanderer had chanced to pass, little would have been seen or heard, and it would have seemed to him only that he saw gray figures carved in stone, memorials of forgotten things now lost in unpeopled lands. For they did not move or speak with mouth, looking from mind to mind, and only their shining eyes stirred and kindled as their thoughts went to and fro.
Yeah, we only get little glimmers of like the telepathic abilities of Gandalf and the, great people of Middle-earth, but this is, I think, the clearest time where it's laid out for us that they can really communicate with each other without speaking.
Yeah, and I think it kind of gets to Tolkien's like philosophy of words, that words are simply signs of truths that go deeper than our ability to express them through language. And for these great beings who are, ancient, I mean, Gandalf's a timeless being.
Uh-huh.
They're able to communicate wordlessly, the kind of the pure intentions of their mind to each other. And it's just really fascinating that we get just a glimpse of that here.
It's good stuff.
So the company parts again, and the group that is going to Lothlorien and the group that is going to Rivendell part. And the Rivendell crew looks back and sees the people of Lothlorien leave, and Galadriel raises her hand, as you mentioned to the beginning of the episode. And Frodo sees the flash of light and knows that she's holding her ring aloft in a token of farewell. And it says, "At last one evening they came over the high moors, suddenly as to travelers it always seemed, to the brink of the deep valley of Rivendell, and saw far below the lamp shining in Elrond's house." And it says that before they'd eaten or washed or shed their dirty clothes, they run off in search of Bilbo. and they find him alone in his little room, sitting in front of the fire, surrounded by papers and pens and pencils. And he looked very old, but peaceful and sleepy.
Of course, he says, "Hello, hello, so you've come back. And tomorrow's my birthday, too. How clever of you." He's going to be 129. In one more year, if I'm spared, I shall equal the old Took. I should like to beat him, but we shall see.
And so they have a celebration for Bilbo's birthday, which is so sweet. And they find out that he's mostly spending time in his own room in front of this fire, except for when he gets up to have meals.
Yeah, he pretty much makes it to dinner on time as a rule.
He's punctual for his meals. And he goes on to talk about just how good the food is in Rivendell. I imagine it really is.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And he apologizes for not making it to Aragorn's wedding. And he says, of course I was invited. But, packing is such a bother.
Yeah, as if that's the only thing that's stopping him.
They stay for 2 weeks in Rivendell with Bilbo. But Frodo realizes that it's time that they move on to the Shire. And Sam agrees. And he says, well, Mr. Frodo, we've been far and seen a deal, and yet I don't think we've found a better place than this. There's something of everything here, if you understand me. The Shire and the Golden Wood and Gondor and king's houses and inns and meadows and mountains all mixed. And yet somehow I feel we ought to be going soon. I'm worried about my gaffer, to tell you the truth. And Frodo says, yes, something of everything, Sam, except the sea. He repeats to himself, except the sea. And Bilbo says his goodbyes, and he, gives them little gifts. Of course, he gives Frodo the mithril coat and stang, forgetting that he'd already done so.
That's so cool. I love it.
And he gives Frodo 3 books that are written in his own spidery hand. Translations from the Elvish by B.B. I think it's so fascinating that he gives these books to Frodo, and he, in the final page of the chapter, which is coming up, he says that he'd like for Frodo to, finish his story.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I'm getting so sleepy. And when I have time to write, I really only like writing poetry. I wonder, Frodo, my dear fellow, if you would very much mind tidying things up a bit before you go. Collect all my notes and papers and my diary too, and take them with you, if you will. You see, I haven't had much time for the selection and arrangement and all that. Get Sam to help, and when you've knocked things into shape, come back and I'll run over it. I won't be too critical. And so he's asking Frodo to finish the story.
Yeah.
There's just something so achingly beautiful about that. Sort of a passing of the guard, like a, recognition that the story never ends in one generation, but it has to kind of be told by the next.
That's right.
And the echo of Frodo finishing his, adopted father's work in Tolkien's own life is so striking to me.
Yeah.
That Tolkien labors his whole life to finish the Silmarillion, which in a lot of ways, is the translations from the Elvish by B.B.
That's right. Yep.
This great work that he's been trying to get published his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And he just can't finish it before he dies. And it falls to his son, Christopher, to finish it for him. And we're so rich because of that.
Absolutely.
We're just so lucky that Tolkien wrote and created all these things, but also that he had a son who would devote his whole life to making sure that it got published.
Yeah, such an act of faith and loyalty to your father and to his memory, and then a gift, to the world, that Tolkien worked on it, but then that Christopher was there to really craft it, edit it, shape it, and
do all the scholarly work that made it worth publishing. There's such a parallel there between, Gimli talking about men's inability to finish anything.
That's so true.
we do sometimes fail of our promise, but never of our seed.
Mm-hmm.
And like through faithfulness and patience, like good things grow from these imperfect attempts at creation. So he gives these translations from the Elvish to Frodo to finish. And to Sam, he gives a little bag of gold.
Mm-hmm.
Says, almost the last drop of the smog vintage. May come in useful if you think of getting married, Sam.
Sam blushes.
Sam blushes. And he says that he doesn't have any gifts to give to Merry and Pippin except for good advice. And so he gives them a good share of good advice before they leave. He says, don't let your heads get too big for your hats. But if you don't finish growing up soon, you're going to find hats and clothes expensive. You know, he says that he doesn't have any gifts to give him, but then he gives him 2 awesome pipes.
Yeah, the pipes are awesome. Think of me when you smoke them.
And that's where we get to the bit where he says, what's become of my ring, Frodo, that you took away?
I've lost it, Bilbo dear. I got rid of it, you know?
And Bilbo says, what a pity. I mean, it's, the ring was his precious.
Absolutely. And it's his age, you know, it's also still the ring has some kind of hold on him. Like it would on anyone, you know, who had it, especially as long as Bilbo had it. And he kind of summarizes the story for us very quickly, you know.
Yeah, 4-line summary of Lord of the Rings.
It was just a ring that I found, parentheses, stole from Smeagol.
Yeah.
And it's wrapped up in Aragorn and the White Council and Gondor and horsemen and Southrons and Oliphants and caves and towers and golden trees and goodness knows what besides.
He says, I evidently came back by much too straight a road from my trip. I think Gandalf might have shown me around a bit, but then the auction would have been over before I got back, and I should have even more trouble than I did. Anyway, it's too late now, and really I think it's much more comfortable to sit here and hear about it all. The fire's very cozy here, and the food's very good. And there are elves when you want them. What more could you want? And then he sings this beautiful song. Do you want to read it?
The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone. Let others follow it who can. Let them a journey new begin, but I at last with weary feet will turn toward the lighted inn, my evening rest and sleep to meet.
It's almost like a call for the reader to go and seek their own adventures. It's like, my great adventure is done, and let others follow the road that I took if they can. Let them a journey new begin. It says, the next day Gandalf and the hobbits took leave of Bilbo in his room, for it was cold out of doors. And then they said farewell to Elrond and all his household. And Elrond wishes them a fair journey, but pulls Frodo aside and says, I think, Frodo, that maybe you will not need to come back unless you come very soon. For about this time of the year, when the leaves are gold before they fall, look for Bilbo in the woods of the Shire. I shall be with him. But Frodo takes these things and ponders them in his heart.
That's what I was going to say.
Good chapter, man.
Good chapter. Next time we'll read Book 6, Chapter 7, Homeward Bound.
We'll see you then.
Bye.